All right, Keith, you ready to rock?
All right, guys, we are live. This is the UFC 274 recap show on the Sherdog Radio Network. This is being brought to you by BetMGM. Make sure you do all your UFC and Bellator bets over there. They have a great bonus if you're a first-time depositor. Use the promo code Sherdog. Man, Ben, we have a lot to talk about. My name is Keith Shillan. I am a staff writer for Sherdog.com. And joining me, as always, is the great senior editor of Sherdog.com, the great Ben Duffy. Ben, I'm like a little razzled over here, shuffling through notes, a lot of stuff to talk about. How you doing, man?
I am doing really well. I made a joke in the Sherdog Slack, as we're kind of doing our fight night responsibilities and talking about the card as it goes on. Just said it was the best of cards. It was the worst of cards. A little Charles Dickens reference there from A Tale of Two Cities. This card, I mean, we had a knockout of the year candidate. We had two round of the year candidates. We had a worst fight of all time candidates. We had a belt vacated the moment the champ stepped into the octagon. This won't go down as the events of the year, but it should go down as the weirdest event of the year. If it doesn't, Lord help us.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, there's so much to talk about. I'm looking at the chat. Shout out to all the people in the chat. If you've never been here before, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. We just ask that if you're going to be in the chat, you just be respectful. Any opinion backed by logic is welcomed here. Just be peaceful with each other. We usually try to read as many comments as we can, questions, opinions, all that. We try to make it very interactive. We're going to cover every single fight from the top to the bottom. Let's go right into it. We had a main event where one fighter could win the title, the other fighter could win nothing, could win the number one contender status, I guess the word would be. We had former UFC lightweight champion Charles Oliveira defeating former interim UFC lightweight champion Justin Gaethje. The reason why I say former is, and I'm sure anybody who's in the chat knows this, Charles Oliveira missed weight. So before we get into the fight, Ben, we don't do a lot of news. We do the preview, we do the recap. I used to do a lot of new stuff before. Maybe I'll get back to it one day. So I haven't got to talk to you about the weight cut. Real quick, just give me your brief thoughts on Charles Oliveira missing weight by a half a pound.
It seems a little sketchy to me. And on paper, well, yeah, Charles Oliveira has missed weight 5 times in his career. He's one of the UFC's worst serial offenders of all time in that regard. So if you're looking at it from the 30,000-foot view, you're like, well, that's just the Bronx being the Bronx. But here it doesn't make sense. He had not had weigh-in problems in a good long while. And every other aspect of his game seemed to have matured and grown out of that kind of weird head case phase that he was in 7 or 8 or 10 years ago. So it feels weird this time. I mean, you're never going to find a champ who loves being champ more and sees it as more of a vindication of his life than Charles Oliveira. All you need to do is watch one of his embedded episodes where he's like, I came from a dirt poor place. My mom is illiterate. Like, this is the house I grew up in. Like, it is everything to him. For him to be surprised by what he weighed on the scale on Friday just seems really, really odd to me. And when you combine that with some of the comments that came from other fighters, where, among others, Ariane Carnelosi said, yeah, the backstage scale they had was, it was lighter than the official scale. And they, while that isn't while that backstage scale isn't an official scale, like the one out front is the only one that really counts, they have that scale back there so that fighters don't have to go up front 5 different times in between sitting with plastic bags on and see if, okay, have I dropped enough weight now? That's what that scale back there is for. If it's not calibrated to the one up front, that's worse than useless. That's actively harmful. I don't know if there was any malfeasance here. It would be easy to draw lines of conspiracy. Well, Gaethje's an Arizona guy. Hey, the UFC would love to, have a different champ than Charles Oliveira. I don't believe any of that.
I don't believe in that either.
I don't attribute to malice what can be explained by incompetence, but this was incompetence, for sure.
Yeah, just so I agree with everything you're saying. The one thing I'm saying is it's 2022. Like, why aren't we using digital scales at this point? I mean, like I know you've wrestled, I've wrestled those mechanical style, the whatever you call it, those you can fudge like a quarter of a pound.
Yep.
Like you could stand there and say, "Hey, guy weighs 135." No, he weighs 135 and a quarter.
You know
A
what?
half a pound's a little tough.
What we should do? Not on this one because this was a packed card of 14 fights and there's a ton to talk about. But sometime when we're recapping like a 10-fight card that's just a snoozer, we'll have you tell the story of how and when you won the Rhode Island State Wrestling Championship.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'll tell you that one. That was a no. They might strip me of the title. So. Yeah, so you said Charles Oliveira, no one liked being a champion more. I'm still living 22 years later in my glory.
He's just got a singlet on, like in the mirror, like flexing.
That's
down,
it. Like... So, to me, it's an easy fix. You put the two scales next to each other. You get one person. Doesn't have to be a fighter. Be anybody. Step on it. Okay, I weigh 182.7 pounds. Okay, I step on this one. I weigh 182.7 pounds. Mm-hmm. Okay, they're the same. And then. There's no fudging. There's no – because one thing I heard some people say is, hey, you're the commissioner. You're looking at it, or the guy who calls out the weight. You're the only person that can see the actual number. Mm-hmm. I've heard people say, like, give the guy a break. It's 155.5. Just say 155. Yep. If he leans on his left toe a little bit, it's going to get down to 155 and a quarter,
And, I mean, we're getting into real, like, JFK shooting territory here, but – there are plenty of people willing to talk about the weight being called while the thing is still swinging. Like, look no further than Gaethje's fight with Khabib, where the commission guy like called the thing while it was still obviously swinging. Khabib stepped off in like a heartbeat. Greatest foot speed the man ever showed, and the fight went on.
Yeah, I remember a thing with Heather Hardy being an issue at Mohegan Sun where I was in. I don't remember the exact detail, but when she weighed in, they used to always give like a certain percentage in boxing, and she said they turned her that she was good, and then it was Anna Hullerton fight, and then all of a sudden they told her she wasn't good and all this. I don't know. It's just another thing of shitty things with MMA. Like we're one of these sports is just shitty things. Like other sports don't have it. Mm-hmm. What wasn't shitty is what actually happened in a incredible 1-round fight between Charles Oliveira and Justin Gaethje. Charles Oliveira getting a first-round submission, continuing to not only get another win and extend his winning streak, but also add to his already record most submissions in UFC history. I've said this before. I think you agree with me. Charles Oliveira is not the best jiu-jitsu practitioner in the history of MMA, but I think he's the best submission artist. If I have to bet on one person to get a submission, it's going to be Charles Oliveira. Like he won't win a jiu-jitsu tournament with a gi on against Damon Meyer or Kron Gracie or something like that. But straight, I got to get one guy to get a submission. That's the guy I'm putting money on.
Oh, completely agreed. And it's because he went into MMA immediately. He never had an amateur career. Like he started doing jiu-jitsu in his garage with a bunch of friends and started taking fights rather than matches. Like he doesn't have any medals on the podium. He doesn't have any real accomplishments to speak of in competition grappling. He's an MMA grappler. And in that context, he probably is the greatest we've ever seen. But yeah.
It's funny. So I was watching the fights as I always usually the pay-per-views. I have a couple of friends go over because they got to message me anyway. So I tell them to come over, and as soon as Oliveira dropped Gaethje and got on top of him, I said the fight's over. And they were like, no, he's getting out. And I said the fight is over. Charles Oliveira is going to submit him, and it looks like he's getting out. And then they said, oh, his hand's down under the chin. I said the fight is over. Because I've seen Charles Oliveira. Yeah, he didn't have his hand underneath the chin. I'm talking about the first time he had the rear naked choke. But I knew a scramble was going to ensue. He distracts by going to an arm. Gaethje adjusts, and then he snatches the neck, does what he does. Charles Oliveira is a really technically sound fighter. Now, it's a Justin Gaethje fight. So he got hurt. He got dropped. Justin Gaethje came so close to winning the title, same way that Michael Chandler was. Same way. I mean, Dustin Poirier didn't really hurt him that much, but, Poirier rocked him a little bit. Charles Oliveira, and I want to talk about this for a second. So you seem to be giving Charles a little bit more of a pass, and I get it. Like I'm not giving him a pass on missing weight, but I do want the dust to settle a little bit. Like I want to give it a couple days to see if we get any more information. If they can prove that there's a fuck up, then give this guy his belt back. But I just want to talk about his mindset for a second. Because thinking about this, you going into enemy territory. You're supposed to be the champion. I know at this point he's stripped, but you're supposed to be the champion. You're going into you agree to fight Justin Gaethje in Phoenix, in his home state, close to where his friends and family, the entire crowd's on his side. You make matters worse by missing weight. They strip you the title. That's what they just keep talking. I mean, for what 36 hours or whatever it was, it's all people talked about was missing weight. You get dropped twice in the beginning of the fight. The crowd's going crazy, and you still find a way to get all these distractions, not let the moment get too much for you, be in the ultimate villain, and still finding a first-round stoppage victory over a incredible talent, Justin Gaethje, who we have ranked in our pound-for-pound rankings. Mm-hmm. Just talk to me for a second about Charles Oliveira.
And to be clear, I'm not giving him a complete pass on missing weight. He was rightfully stripped of the belt, and now he's essentially the number one contender. That's as it should be. Like, you miss weight as a champ, you lose the belt. I will say this. If he'd missed weight by like 3 pounds or something, I'd be more inclined to think, you know what? This fight boiled down to Oliveira being able to walk through Gaethje's offense and recover, and Gaethje couldn't do the same when Oliveira hurt him. And maybe the extra water weight made a difference. In this case, I'm less inclined to believe so. I think he was just the better fighter tonight. This is something that if any fighter had an excuse to just be mentally checked out before a fight happened, he had every pretext to do so because of all the reasons you mentioned. He's fighting in enemy territory. He's fighting a famously high pressure fighter. He missed weight, like, clearly by surprise. It's not one of those ones where a fighter's slinking around all week and you know that they know that they're way heavy and they're not going to make it. Like, he was legitimately surprised, like, whatever you think of it. This had every chance to break him, and he didn't break. And you could tell, like, walking out, he was having a good time. He didn't look like a man walking to his own funeral. He didn't look like a man, like, roaring and making mean faces to try to psych himself up. He was smiling, and his team was smiling. He's a guy that he felt like he had this. And to be able to shut out all those distractions, that's impressive. And we keep coming back to this, or at least I keep coming back to it, because these images are impossible to get out of your mind if you were watching the sport, in 2009. This is not the kind of adversity that Charles Oliveira used to be able to fight through, or that I ever thought he would be able to fight through. He is a different man.
Yeah, I want to talk about his record for a second. I want to talk about his last 5 fights. I just want to read you this resume right now. Kevin Lee, submission. Tony Ferguson, unanimous decision in a fight where most people are submitting, if you're not crazy, Tony Ferguson. Michael Chandler, TKO. Dustin Poirier, submission. Justin Gaethje, submission. Like, how insane is that 5-fight run that he's on? And his winning streak goes much longer than that. I just wanted to point out those 5.
Yeah. No, it's a hell of a run. And there's some people in the chat like talking about Oliveira having been a glass cannon. I'm not even sure he was. I mean, he was a glass cannon in the broad terms that he had incredible offense, but like was very susceptible to his opponent's defense. But he was never chinny. Like, he would gas out, or he'd be caught in submissions by just less impressive grapplers, or people would start rolling downhill on him, and he'd get TKO'd by like 1,000 cuts. But I mean, he didn't usually just get lamped and like one-shotted. So he wasn't glass that way. But yeah, he just used to be a guy that, I mean, once upon a time, Tony Ferguson was the worst possible style matchup you could have imagined for this guy. Because, Ferguson was never a high-power guy, but just someone who wore people down with unrelenting pressure, and the Bronx couldn't deal with that. And they've both changed.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So, pound-for-pound rankings. Can he go up in the pound-for-pound rankings even though he missed weight? Here's my argument. He missed weight for the title, but he still made lightweight. If it was a non-title fight, I think he would move up the rankings. Why can't he move up the rankings regardless of missing by a half pound?
I'm comfortable moving him up the pound for pound rankings. It was 2 lightweights fighting, and you know, the pound for pound rankings, by their very nature, it's a list of people that don't lose very often. So style points count, and level of opposition count. And as you pointed out by naming that Murderer's Row, when you're the lightweight champ, or you're in the title picture, you are fighting better fighters, fight in and fight out, than the champions or like top 3 guys of any other division. Basically, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the Sherdog rankings, and he's currently 6. Now, it's a little deceiving because we update the Sherdog pound for pound rankings once a month. Right now, we have AJ McKee ahead of him. That was before AJ McKee lost to Pitbull, so he'll drop behind Charles Oliveira. But I'm looking at the 4 guys that would respectfully be ahead of him right now, and that's in reverse order, going 4 up to 1: Francis Ngannou, Israel Adesanya, Alexander Volkanovski at 2, and Kamaru Usman at number 1. I am not going to make this argument in our rankings discussion, but I think you can make an argument for Charles Oliveira number 1.
You can make an argument for him. I'm certainly going to be advocating for him to jump, like he'll jump past Ngannou, like at least to jump to number 3 behind Volkanovski and Usman.
The argument I would say for Charles Oliveira, and again, I'm not making this one, but I'm just saying if you want to be the ultimate Charles Oliveira backer, and I know it's a little weird for me to do a rankings debate for a guy after he missed weight, but I just named the top 3 guys in this division, and he got stoppage wins and back-to-back wins over all 3 of them. Yeah. Kamaru Usman did not stop Colby Covington. Alex Volkanovski did not stop Max Holloway. Israel Adesanya, I mean, he stops everybody, but Robert Whittaker, right? The second Whittaker fight. There's your argument for Charles Oliveira.
There is, and unlike Usman, Oliveira doesn't have any 2 fights against Jorge Masvidal, like kind of like again,
yeah.
It comes like when you're talking about guys that just by definition don't lose very often, then you have to start comparing the wins, and there are some wins are better than others. The rematch with Masvidal, that's a bad win.
Yeah. Let's move on to Justin Gaethje. So he was, as I mentioned, he was extremely close. He had Oliveira drop twice. He had Charles. I mean, he was gushing blood. I don't know how bad the cut was, but I turned to like a friend and I go, I don't know how bad that cut is, but it's bleeding over the eye. Like I could see this get stopped in between rounds. Like I mean, again, I didn't know how bad it was. Obviously didn't look like too bad after they cleaned it up. But I think it was someone in the chat just said, Justin Gaethje is never going to be the champion. He's had 2 title fights. He's not won either one of them. Are you kind of having the same feel?
And nobody won them. Like both nights that he lost, like the title was vacant by the end of the night. How sad is that?
Point. Yeah. Justin Gaethje always seemed like a guy that has a very limited window based on his style, based on the amount of damage he's taken. Like it's a very limited window. Like you can't miss these opportunities.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because this night was alarming to me. I think the Gaethje that waded through fire against Michael Johnson in his UFC debut would have been fine against Oliveira tonight. I think his chin is starting to slip.
Yeah, I mean, Gaethje always gets rocked. I want to give a little credit to Charles Oliveira because his style. I mean, he presses forward. And the difference between Gaethje and him is everything's coming down tight. Everything's tight down the middle. While Gaethje was really winding up, slowing himself down. At one point, he threw a left hook that he knocked himself over. That's when when I saw Gaethje throw that left hook. That's when I became extremely confident in Charles Oliveira. Even though at that point I think he was already dropped twice at that point and was bloodied up. I said, no, Gaethje's starting to fall apart. He's starting to get a little desperate. He's getting a little tired. And Charles Oliveira did this. Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler pulled a hell of a promo. Is he the guy got to fight Charles Oliveira in the number 1 contender matchup, or do you have somebody else in mind?
In a just world, I think it's Chandler because Chandler came close to beating him the last time, and all he's done since is, I mean, he had a fight of the year with Gaethje. He demolished another contender. I mean, your other options are just bring the new blood in, throw Islam Makhachev in there, or make the McGregor fight. There's no justice in this world, but if the UFC desperately wants it to happen, and DeBronx openly wants it to happen, he called his name, because he wants that paycheck, and he probably thinks it's a fairly easy fight for him. Make that happen. I'm of the mind that the champ should have a little bit of leeway in calling his shot. And while he's not technically the champ, he was the champ. He's gonna be in the next title fight. I'm fine with any of those three, honestly.
Yeah. So you mentioned Makhachev, you mentioned Chandler, you mentioned McGregor. I understand what you're saying. I'm only leaning towards one guy. I think Chandler made his best case. I just can't get past the guy he's on a one fight winning streak. Sure. Getting a title. As far as McGregor, I
You went mute, Keith.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to hit mute. As far as McGregor, I do live in the moment. I have a little promotional side to me where I try to look what would make me the most money and this and that. I still have a little bit of a purist in me. I've seen a guy lose back-to-back fights. I've seen a guy with a broken leg. To me, the McGregor fight is always in the back pocket. Anytime he loses, it's still always available for you. I want to get a little bit of a shine back with the hardcores. But feed him somebody. Feed him Nate Diaz. I always thought that was the fight to make. Shit. Give him Joe Lazon. Give him somebody. Give him somebody that he's going to win, that has a name, and get him a couple wins. Even if you're faking it to everybody else, you give him Clay Guida. You give him guys that everybody else knows that these are softball to Conor McGregor, but just get him 2 or 3 wins. Let him talk. Let him get on the mic. Let him say something. Then get him a title fight. But as you mentioned, is there a worse stylistic matchup in the entire UFC lightweight division for Conor McGregor than Charles Oliveira?
No, there isn't, because obviously McGregor's a big hitter, but so is Gaethje, so is Chandler, and at least Oliveira's been getting back up and getting the better of them. And Conor's become more and more of kind of a one-weapon striker. If Oliveira knows that he's just looking to lay the left hook on you, he's not going to land it.
Yeah.
And Oliveira will kick the crap out of Conor's legs after watching the Poirier fight.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think, obviously the submission threat is where I would be most nervous. I would favor Oliveira huge, but I give Conor a shot against anybody. I really do believe he's extremely high talent. I give him a shot, but of the 3 guys you mentioned, I give him the least shot of beating Charles Oliveira. To me, it's Makhachev. He's the guy who's kind of been on the outside. He's looked incredibly dominant back-to-back 4 fights. You have that Khabib Nurmagomedov kind of little, I don't want to say student, but understudy or something like that going for him. He's becoming more and more remarkable the way he's talking. He's talking a little bit more. That's the fight I do. Heading into this fight, I was feeling that Oliveira is a better stylistic matchup against Makhachev than Gaethje is. I think, in the sense that Makhachev would have an easier time with Gaethje with Oliveira. I think I would favor Makhachev, but I'm not confident right now. Especially on the feet. And on the feet, I'm favoring Oliveira.
His striking is so improved.
Yeah.
Yep. Not much more to say than that.
Yeah. So that's the fight I'm doing. It's a number 1 contender matchup. So I'm looking at Justin Gaethje and I'm saying, what do we do with Justin Gaethje? The issue is he's really fought everybody.
Yeah.
The top guys. It's hard to go from fighting for the title to fighting Drew Dober. You know what I mean? That's hard to do. To make a understandable step down, who would you do?
Well, I was gonna say he needs a step down because basically he's lost to everyone above and around him in the rankings. It sounds like they finally got RDA booked for a fight. He seriously, it sounds like Dan Hooker wants to come back to lightweight. Could do something like that. If someone like Gregor Gillespie is ready to fight, that's great. I mean, honestly, the winner of RDA and Fiziev would be an appropriate fight for him. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I was thinking about this one. Not I didn't write this one down, but stylistically, Connor versus Gaethje would be hell of a fun with the way they rock him sock him with Gaethje's chin, but with his offensive leg kicks would be something. I went a rematch. I went Dustin Poirier. I said the first fight wasn't fantastic. They're both kind of on the outside and not really in the title picture. This gets one of them back in the title picture. I would do Dustin Poirier.
I like that just fine. It'd be a great fight again. So.
And I don't like to rush back rematches. It's just one of these. They're both kind of. I still think the fight to make is Colby Covington versus Dustin Poirier, but it seems like Dustin Poirier doesn't want anything to do with that. So I would do Justin Gaethje. Is there anything else about the main event you think we should talk about?
No, I think we've covered it pretty well.
Yeah. Okay. I can't put this off any longer. Rose Namajunas entered UFC 274 as the champion. She took on former champion Carlos Esparza. Carlos Esparza won the UFC Strawweight champion by beating Rose Namajunas for then the inaugural title 8 years ago. Well, Carlos Esparza has done it again. She has beat Rose Namajunas once again to be crowned a two-time UFC strawweight champion. That was my best. Try to make it sound like it was a little bit exciting. This is one of the worst fights ever.
Yeah, I'm trying not to overstate this. Like I've seen some bad fights over the years at the UFC level, as well as like just lower level, like local shows and stuff. But the thing is, a terrible local show usually ends in a hilarious knockout. It's like watching something on Break.com live. I will say that it's probably the worst UFC title fight I've ever seen.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and I was trying to figure out, because I knew we'd talk about, is this the worst title fight in history? So, well, let's put a pin on this. Let's get to who you scored the fight for.
Okay. I scored the fight 48-47 for Esparza. I did not give any 10-10 rounds. I know a couple people did, both at Sherdog and at other outlets. I can understand why, because especially the first 3 rounds individually, just nothing happened. But yeah, I picked someone each round, and it ended up 3 rounds to 2 for Esparza.
So I probably had the weirdest scorecard of anybody. I scored it 49-48 for Esparza. So we both in agreement with Esparza winning. I'm sorry, you said Esparza, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. The reason why I gave a 10-10 round the first 2 rounds. I went 10-10 and 10-10 again. So it's so rare for me to give a 10-10 round and then do it back-to-back rounds. It was crazy. I gave the 3rd round to Esparza. I gave the 4th round to Esparza. So I went 10-10, 10-10, 10-9, 10-9. So that's why she got so many points. And then the 5th round, I gave it to Namajunas. So that's where I had the 49-48 scorecard.
Well, I mean, both the other scorers for Sherdog had it 49-48.
Oh, okay.
Not that weird. Like, they both had it for Namajunas. They both scored the first 2 rounds 10-10. Everyone, I think, gave the 5th round to Rose. Like, that seemed to be the one round that was a little bit decisive, but they just happened to give her one of the others. So they both had it 49-48 for Namajunas.
Okay. So we both agree with Esparza. I looked at MMA decisions to see, because obviously this was one, besides being extremely close, this was one of the hardest fights to score, because we've had close rounds, we've had back and forth, we've had wars where, like, man, how do you score a fight like that? Who do you score that for? This was so tough because there was no action to score off of.
Yep.
I looked at MMA decisions. It was 10 MMA media members gave it to Esparza, 7 gave it to Namajunas, with 1 person giving it a draw. I'm okay with any of them, but this is what I'm going to say, and tell me if you agree, and we can discuss this. I'm watching the action, and I blame 2 people mostly for this lack of action. The first person I blame is the referee. Like, we've seen referees stop. I know there's no yellow cards like there was in Pride, but stop and say, "Hey guys, come to the center," or gals, come to the center. We got to see some action. You guys got to do something. Like, we've seen it happen many times. If we've seen it happen in fights with way less, way more action than we saw tonight, and that happened. What the hell is Keith Peterson doing?
Uh, taking a smoke break? I don't know. Like, I agree. There's some referees that are they're more active that way. They will insert themselves into the action or lack of action more often. They're quick to break up like clinches against the fence when it's just stalling. They're quicker to stand fighters up. They'll tell fighters to get to work on the feet. Herb Dean is the most famous of those. Herb Dean is the one that'll tell people to get to work on the feet the fastest. Yeah, Keith Peterson, he brooked all kinds of nonsense tonight. Who's the other person you blame? Because I have something to say about this. So, but
so I'm gonna stay on Keith Peterson for one more minute. There was another fight I can't remember. There was another fight I said there needs to be a point taken. I don't remember. I remember Lugoy Ivanov reaching his arm when he was getting taken out, reaching his arm right over the cage and grab it. I don't know. Was Keith Peterson the referee in that one?
I will tell you in just a second here.
If it wasn't that one, there was another fight. I think it was the Vergara fight where Vergara grabbed the cage. Yes, it was Keith Peterson was in this one. Twice, Vergara grabbed the cage where Keith Peterson had to rip his hands off. Like, come on, dude. Like, you grabbed the cage. One time, it actually helped him keep position on top of Rodriguez. And then later on, he does it again.
The heavyweight fight, it was Mark Goddard.
Okay, so Goddard, okay. Yeah. I think Goddard should take a point at that point. But Keith Peterson, to me, had a terrible night. And it's funny because the commentary team wasn't talking to the fifth round. I was tweeting it way before that, saying, like, what the hell? The other person I blame, and most people say, well, blame the two fighters. I blame Rose more than I blame Kala, and I'll tell you why. To me, Kala was trying to close the distance and simply just couldn't. Like, she was trying to hit Rose and couldn't. It was like her inability to hit her. Rose could hit Kala and refused to do so. Like, she was moving around. She was trying to keep distance, but then, like, no offense. Like, for some reason, I don't know what was going on in her mind, but she thought, like, making Kala miss was points for her. It's like, I always tell people, like, I hate when people say, oh, they stopped the takedown. Like, what does that mean? Like, I don't get points for blocking a punch. Why do I get points? For stopping a takedown? It's a defensive move. Like, you got to tackle in football. You don't get a point for that. That's why I blame Rose a little bit more than I blame Kala. Like, so to me, I felt like Kala was trying, just didn't have the ability to.
I agree. Between the two fighters, I would say more of the blame falls on Rose. I mean, Esparza was coming forward. Basically the whole time she was coming forward. If Namajunas is just continuing to back off, circle out, give ground, and not really throwing much offense back, like, what is Esparza supposed to do at that point? Just sprint? Like, there's one fighter that was really refusing to engage on the feet for most of it.
Yeah. And actually, I said I blame two people. I'm going to blame a third one. I'm going to blame Rose's corner, specifically Pat Barry. Like, Pat, when it came, we heard the corner a couple of times. I don't know if it was the fourth round or the fifth round, but Pat Barry was, like, cheering on. He said, you hear those boos? That's perfect. That's good. And obviously the fighter could say no to the corner, can do whatever they want. So ultimately it comes down to the fighter. But that was really weird. I saw a lot of people bashing Trevor Whitman. Trevor Whitman was giving different advice than Pat Barry. He was telling her to open up. Obviously there was a mix-up between Pat Barry and Trevor Whitman on what the strategy for. That was really weird. But I don't know how either corner could have been confident that they were winning rounds.
No.
Which is weird.
No. If anything, I wasn't going to be mad at any outcome once it went to the judges. I'm like, pardon my French, but fuck this fight. I don't care who wins. But I kind of in the back of my mind expected that Namajunas would get the decision just because there would be judges who nothing happened this round. I'm just going to kind of default to the champ or the favorite or the more known fighter. We see it happen all the time.
Yeah. One thing I would give the UFC credit, when there's a bad fight, specifically Joe Rogan, he doesn't try to make it sound better. Like, a lot of times you'll have a bad fight and you'll have commentators say, like, when you got such high level fighters like this, it can be really a chess match or a mind game, or they'll try to put a popular spin or a positive spin on it. I like that, Joe Rogan was bashing this fight, saying imagine if this is your first time watching fights, or you told someone about Rose Namajunas and this is the dud you're getting. You're going to lose fans over this. I like that. I like that they were going that hard, because you know why? It doesn't do. If you try selling it, everyone's gonna say, "What are you doing?" Do the opposite. Say, "This sucks. We're sorry," and like almost you joke with your friends a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Just it it removes their credibility when you can tell they're just always in sales mode. And I mean, I have a lot of good memories of the guy's work, but Mauro Ranallo is king of that.
Oh yeah.
Just putting on the brave face, no matter how bad the action is going on in the cage or the ring. No, like I didn't think it was a very good night for the UFC booth. Like, just Rogan and DC together are terrible to me, but they just bring out each, like, the laziest traits in each other. I think they can be good with other people individually, but when you get them together, they just kind of get into like buddy cop mode, and it just gets bad. Like, not real cops, like buddy cop movie, where they just
I was
go
like, "What are you
banter. Oh,
saying? You're
yeah,
saying
no, hey.
what are you saying?" But two cops together are bad. All right. All right. So,
Dude, I've got to speak out about this because
good.
the chat seems to be siding overwhelmingly with you. I don't blame Barry that much. Barry is not her head coach. Barry is her boyfriend. And if we want to take a side conversation about that and how inappropriate it may or may not be, I'm here for it on a different show. But ultimately, he is not her head coach. It's his job to kind of cheerlead. And then it's Whitman's job to, like, give her the truth. And Whitman is the head coach. Like, whatever is said in that corner, it's like, ultimately that has Whitman's stamp of approval on it. Otherwise, all he needed to do was look at Barry after the first round and say, okay, I'm talking first from now on. Because every round it was Barry talking first and then handing it to Whitman. And Barry's job is really, he's not supposed to give her specific advice. He's just there to center her.
Yeah. No, that I think that's a really good point, and I can see that argument. And usually his job is to say, "Who's the best? You're the best." This kind of stuff. Yeah, I can see that. So maybe it's very, very poor planning. Maybe they put a little too much like on Rose to make a decision. It was not a good night for Trevor Whitman.
No.
That whole camp. We talk about, I don't know what number UFC it was, but when he went 3-0 with Usman, Namajunas, and Gaethje winning, well, he went 0-2 tonight in back-to-back fights. Really, really bad. You said so. All right, you asked, is this the worst? You said this is the worst UFC title fight in history. I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no, and I'm gonna tell you why. And it's gonna be a really dumb answer. So, I think about ones that come to my mind that I would say they're worse than this. I think of three, and there might be more, but the three I think of: Tim Sylvia versus Jeff Monson was terrible. Anderson Silva versus Damian Maia was terrible. And Silva versus Talos Leitzis was terrible. And all three of those fights had more action than this fight. But the reason why I'll say this fight was better is I didn't know who won. The other ones, I know Tim Sylvia won. I know Anderson Silva won. I had the whole 25 minutes. At least now I'm saying I don't know who won this round. I don't know who won that round. There was like some kind of weird excitement. Who's going to win the decision? So that's why I think this was better.
There was morbid curiosity over who was going to win. I mean, I can agree with that. It's more of a reflection of just, kind of what standards you're using to grade these very, very difficult to watch fights. I mean, I'd much rather rewatch any of those other fights 3 months from now than this one, because now that I know who wins this one, it is a fight where nothing happens.
Yeah, that's a good argument. That's a very good argument. But at least I will never be entertained with those three fights. I guess I was somewhat like 1% entertained, wondering who's going to win, and then actually, like when the team was saying something very similar that I was saying, I remember they were talking about the rounds, just nothing happening. I remember saying, like, this is actually good for Kala because all she needs is one takedown now.
Yep.
Like one takedown, and she's going to win the round. Bass pointed out Arlovski Sylvia 2. He probably actually means Arlovski Sylvia 3 because Arlovski Sylvia 2 was actually where Arlovski dropped Sylvia, then Sylvia caught him coming in.
Their first 2 fights were a blast.
Yeah, both of them were. The third one was terrible.
The second Stephen Thompson Tyron Woodley fight was terrible too. Like the
Yeah, but at
first
least
one
we
that
had
was a
that.
draw was great. Like the second one, yeah.
Yeah, there's some bad ones. So what do we do? I mean, you're not gonna. Carla Esparza was never marketable. This doesn't help her. Like, she gets the title and good for her, 2-time champion now. It's a good story and like resilience, but as far as you're making, like, her next fight is not gonna be a main event. It's not gonna be a main event. It's gonna be a co-main event.
Dude, I mean,
It might even be third down if you get like a loaded card.
I don't want to tip my hand too hard for the Bulls and Bears, but the biggest winners tonight were Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Weili Zhang, because all of a sudden they have a title eliminator coming.
Okay, so you're gonna say that one.
Yeah, dude, there's no way I'm remaking this knowing that Rose might like just drop a turd in the swimming
Oh
pool
yeah,
like
no,
that
no,
again.
no. The rematch is like the trilogy fight. No way.
Like it
So
would
I'm
be
going.
it would be insulting to not let, especially Jędrzejczyk, like think that she's fighting for a title shot.
Well,
Considering how bad she beat Esparza.
yeah, I guess I'm gonna insult her then because that's not the matchup I'm doing.
What are you doing?
Well, my issue with Joanna Weili winner is the winner of that fight is on a 1-fight winning streak. Yeah, I guess you don't say streak. They got 1 win in a row. Weili is coming off back-to-back losses. Joanna's coming off a loss. Obviously would win. I'm going outside of the names that we normally say. I'm not making Jessica Andrade. I'm not doing Rose Namajunas. I'm giving Marina Rodriguez to fight. She's on a 4-fight winning streak. It's a fun stylistic matchup. She's much bigger than Esparza. You got wrestler versus grappler. I mean, striker versus grappler. There's an avenue for victory for both of them. A little different, fresh face. And then it's not whoever Carlos Esparza fights next. It's not going to be in the main event, so you don't need that fight. You can kind of go the purist route instead of like the marketable route. I'm giving Marina Rodriguez to fight.
I'm fine with that.
Rose is gonna be tough because she's kind of fought everybody. What are you doing, Rose?
I don't know. I think I wouldn't be shocked if Rose retired.
I'm glad you said that because
I said that on the preview. I was like,
you did.
Of every sitting champ in recent memory in the UFC, she's the one right alongside Khabib where I wouldn't be surprised if she retired, and I would believe her if she retired. She's always been a different cat. She's never needed this like in an unhealthy way. Like she's not the fighter that's gonna retire on like 5 straight losses or get booted from the UFC and go somewhere else. If she's not having fun, if she's not doing this at the highest level, she's gonna be done with it. And some part of her seemed mentally checked out tonight. Like she never engaged. And scrolling back to like the whole interactions with Pat Barry. Again, his whole job there is to be the Rose Whisperer. If he was that transparent of a cheerleader, maybe there was something brittle going on in there that if he pulled the Jim West and was just like, what the hell are you doing out there? She would have snapped, started crying, left the cage. I don't know. I'm just saying he knows her better than anybody in the room, including Whitman. And that was what came out. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention about the Marina, right? It's on my notes. I did look down my notes. Let's not forget that Marina and Carla already fought each other, and it was a controversial split decision that people debate either way.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think it actually makes it a little more exciting. I remember when TJ Dillashaw and I'm sorry, not TJ Dillashaw, Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard had that draw, and they actually had like the countdown show was them two sitting down watching the fight and like discussing who won. Like I think they could do like a similar thing with that, like them both watching the fight and Carla explaining how she won and Marina explaining how she won. Yeah, Rose, I totally agree. Like one thing that was really weird is like how confident she seemed when the fight ended. Like she was like saying like, yeah, like she was celebrating like I'm the best. Like it wasn't just I'm raising my hand. It was more like, yeah, that's what I do. I've won. I've avenged my early career loss, like stuff like that. Yeah, you always wonder like, some of her answers at press conferences are always kind of like a little weird. Like, how'd you become a better fighter? I just started doing God's will, and I'm a religious person. It's still kind of weird answer. If she is gonna fight, and this is just like lack of options, I just do the trilogy with Jessica Andrade, and I make it a main event of of a fight night.
You know what? I like that because it's something that would make Andrade already undeniably, a title, the next title challenger if she wins. Because remember, after she beat Amanda Lemos, I said if Namajunas wins on May 7th, then I think Andrade should be your next title challenger.
Yeah.
And I said it gets more complicated if Namajunas doesn't win. But yeah, like make Andrade versus Rose 3.
Yeah, and right now, if you're the UFC and you're actually looking at the options, like I really feel like there's 4, maybe even 5 options. The 4 options, and this is now not what I would make. This is more like the most likely outcome. Yeah, the 5th one I would probably say like I'm gonna do 5th to 4, 5 up, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The 5th one being the Namajunas trilogy. I highly doubt they run that one back immediately. The 4th one. What if we went like Mackenzie Dern? Stylistic matchup, grappler versus wrestler. The number 3, I'd go, and this is again me guessing what the UFC would do. We'd be the Jessica Andrade, being that they've never fought each other. 2, going my route, Marina Rodriguez, and the most likely is I actually think it's going to be the winner of Weili versus Joanna. I think that's the most likely. I wouldn't do that, but that's probably the most likely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably kind of the order of likelihood for sure.
Yeah. Let's move. And I'm sorry, guys. We're actually not reading the comments as much as we normally do.
I'm reading them and responding to a few here and there, but I did get something from Technical Wealth. Welcome back, by the way. Apparently, in the post-fight press conference, Rose said she thought she was up 4-1, which, that is not an endorsement of Pat Barry's cornering skills, because,
Yeah, I think a little bit of AJ McKee thing that what happened with Pitbull, where the corner's telling you winning, where they should have been really like not confident. I think that was happening. I think she really felt because it's a striker versus grappler. I think she's thinking she's scoring points by like winning scrambles or just defending takedowns. I think she felt she was winning because she was missing. It was mostly a striking battle, so I felt like maybe she thought was winning because of that. And the only round she probably thought she lost was the 4th. Like that was the round when she was taken down twice. So she was like, all right, I lost that one. But because I wasn't taken down in the other rounds, I think she thought she won.
Probably. Dev says let's move on. I say we listen to our corner man.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's a title. I can't just glaze over it, guys. Before that, Tony Ferguson took on Michael Chandler. Can I just say something real quick before I actually talk about the fight? Like, guys, if you work for Bellator, like, don't be tweeting about like, hey, look what Michael Chandler did. Like, that shows you how good Bellator fighters are. Well, then when Michael Chandler loses, do you do the same thing? Like I don't know. Like he left your company. Like, stop.
Yeah. I mean, like, the UFC should have just like replied with like some Will Brooks highlights from his UFC career.
Yeah. So Michael Chandler knocks out Tony Ferguson in one of the greatest knockouts you will ever see. One of the scariest knockouts. Tony Ferguson was out for a really long time, really scary. This is going to be the knockout of the year, correct?
Yes. If this isn't the knockout of the year, we are in for a treat.
Yeah.
I mean, that was probably the best knockout of its kind, just like straight front kick to the chin. I mean, that bumps like Machida Couture. That bumps Anderson Silva, Vitor Belfort for me. Just Tony was so dead. And it was so shocking because he had looked so good in the first round. I
know. I was like writing notes and I'm like, oh my God, Michael Chandler's getting walked down by Tony, and Tony's, keeping him on the edge of his punches, keeping the pressure on him. Like, this is like vintage Tony in the beginning.
Yep.
And when he got the takedown, he had that beautiful double leg where he actually like cut the hips out to get side control. Like, that was beautiful. That was starting to be the changing point. I think the way Tony's head doesn't even go back, it almost goes up. Like, he almost hit him like up, and then
Pez dispenser.
Yeah, and then it had a little bit of that Alistair Overeem getting knocked out by Francis Ngannou move, where he's going up like that, and then the way he falls flat face first, like face planting, always to me looks worse than if guys go back. And then I think the reason why Tony was knocked out, if you told me that Michael Chandler face planted Tony Ferguson, I'd be like, okay, like Tony's kind of a shot fighter. I'm expecting he's a shot fighter. Michael Chandler hits extremely hard, but I think everyone thought that. It's the kick. You got this. He's a short lightweight. It's a front kick. Like never in a million. If you had me like said like all right, write down the ways Chandler knocks out Ferguson. Like all right, first guess, right hand.
Overhand
Second
right.
guess, left hook. Third guess, pick him up and slam him. Fourth guess, uppercut. Like how far do I got to go down to front kick to the face? Like it's got to be 30 or 40 down.
Yeah, it's way like you get to 10 before you get to anything involving his feet.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I'd have like accidentally knees him on like some collision during a takedown attempt, like before front kick to the jaw. Yeah, just Tony was so knocked out. Like it was alarming. Tony has given us a lot of alarming visuals in the cage over the last year or two.
Yeah. So Michael Chandler is 2-2 in the UFC. Has there been a more, and I'm trying to think of the word I want to say, like more successful 2-2 run in the UFC than what Michael Chandler has done? And what I mean by that is he comes in on a huge UFC walk off, one punch, perfectly timed knockout of Daniel Hooker, follows that up by getting a title shot, loses but has huge moments, almost wins the title, excitement. Third fight, he loses again, but fights Justin Gaethje in the fight of the year. Fourth fight, knockout of the year. I mean, like, what a better run for a guy going 2-2.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Just the UFC gave him no grace period at all because it's a win-win for them if they embarrass the former Bellator champ, or he steps up and does great, and hey, they've got this, frankly, marketable, charismatic new star. Like it was win-win for them to just push him right into the deep end of the pool. But man, he has shown out. I was talking with somebody on Twitter on this, just from the Sherdog account. I was doing the tweeting from the Sherdog account tonight, but he is the youngest old fighter in the world. He's 36. He's 36. He's had a ton of fights. I mean, this was his 30th fight, and a ton of those fights have been super big wars. I mean, he's been in a bunch of the greatest fights of all time. Like his fights.
The Justin Gaethje fight that we talk about. Sorry to interrupt you.
Uh-huh.
The Justin Gaethje fight, which was the fight of the year last year, arguably might not even be his best fight.
Yeah, but it was fight of the year. He had our 2013 fight of the year against Eddie Alvarez. Like he's had multiple fights of the year, and they were blood and guts brawls. And he's always had a style that ran on explosion and athleticism, and just you didn't figure it was going to age well into his late 30s. And he can just still do all the things he used to do. It's ridiculous.
It's funny because everyone was cheering for Tony Ferguson. It's a very Hispanic crowd. He's living up to Hispanic. He's from the Southwest area. It made sense. It made sense for Tony. And plus, Tony Ferguson he's the known guy. Going back to the Khabib rivalry, and he's the more known. But I don't know anybody who doesn't like Michael Chandler. He's so likable.
I mean, I know there are some people that find him a little bit off-putting for some reason, but
how?
I don't know, because his fight style.
It's like, you know what it is? I'll say this. It's the people who don't like Tim Tebow.
I mean, that would be it. Like, if he just kind of represents that, heartland, super Christian, well-polished athlete. If you don't like that, if you don't like Tim Tebow, you might not like Michael Chandler. But aside from that, what do you got? You've got a guy who's never in a boring fight, fights at a super high level. And I said on Twitter, and a bunch of people came at me for it, I think he might be the best on the mic of any high-level fighter in MMA right now.
Well, he's so polished. Like, I guess I know he's the ultimate family man. I mean, you can't watch a Michael Chandler promo without any countdown or anything. Like, you understand his family life. He's a super, the way he talks, he says, I serve my children. He's a very family-oriented guy. But he just seems so – I mean, I know he's done it before. He's done the booth and stuff. To me, he needs to be in the booth even more. the desk and the booth, or not the booth, but the desk, because he's so polished. He really is.
I mean,
Like even the press conference, the way he talks.
Yeah. He's got a kind of polish that you usually don't see from MMA fighters. You see them from major stick and ball sports because they have actual media training. Like when I said that I think he's the best on the mic of any high-level fighter in MMA, a bunch of people came for me and they all had Irish flag icons on Twitter because...
But it's a different...
Well, they're thinking shit talking. And
no.
He's a guy... Like, Chandler's a guy that he's perfectly good at promoting a fight or asking for a fight and doesn't necessarily have to do it without saying outrageous things or insulting his opponent. There's a place for that, but a lot of the so-called best talkers in MMA, like, that's the only weapon they have. It's like, I'm a really funny, like, an outrageous shit talker. Like, that's your Israel Adesanya's, your Conor McGregor's. Like, Michael Bisping was more than that. Chael Sonnen was more than that, but a lot of it, it's just the shit talking.
Yeah, and like, Chael Sonnen has changed, and that's why he's like, now he's being honest, and like that's how Chandler is. Like I can see Chandler moving right into a role like that where he's breaking down MMA when he retires and giving his opinion on big things. Like he's perfect. I'm gonna address this, and I'm gonna address this extremely short because we have tons of fight. Alan McDonald said, "What about the Michael Chandler Black History Month video package?" I know there was some hate for that. That has nothing to do with Michael Chandler. That has everything to do with the UFC. So don't blame him because he adopted a black kid. Like he should be getting credit for saving a young kid, being a dad to a kid that didn't have a dad. That's like if you're spinning that to be a negative, then you're an asshole.
Yeah, agreed. Like I just typed it in the chat. Like
okay.
I made fun of that at the time, but that wasn't about Chandler, and it definitely wasn't about the dude. It's never about the kids. That's the UFC being buffoons. Yeah,
it was UFC not getting it, but Chandler's the good guy in that story. Anyways, I totally agree, and I'm glad you brought this up. We didn't talk about his actual in-cage promo. I turned to every guy in there and I said, "That is the perfect promo. This is perfect. You just had this huge knockout. The crowd's going crazy. Go over the top with your scream. It's a memorable call out. Calling out Oliveira, calling out Gaethje, and then like it was smart. I'm going to shoot my shot for the title because that's what he's in the sport for. But he even knows it's probably Makhachev getting that shot. I'm probably not going to get that. So don't let me get Dariush. Don't let me get whoever. Let me get Conor. Like it was smart. Like I'm going to give you, this is what I want or this. Like I'm giving you two options. Brilliant. I don't think he gets either one. He might get the Conor one, but.
Who do you think Conor wants? Who do you think if Conor knows he has a limited number of giant paycheck fights left, of the people we've mentioned, who do you think he thinks is the easiest win?
Okay, so I think Conor wants the title first. So I think he wants Charles Oliveira. Conor is different. He really is different. Even when he was rising, he always liked to challenge himself. Like say what you want about Conor, he was always down for. I mean, he didn't run away from Khabib. He went for him. He Chad Mendes on short notice and never. I mean, when everyone was, Jose Aldo was arguably the best fighter in the world. He wanted Jose Aldo. I think Conor wants the ultimate. He has the supreme confidence. So the reason why I'm saying this, I think Charles Oliveira is number one, but like I could see him going like a Justin Gaethje because of the huge moment Michael Chandler because of the huge moment he just had. Still trying to get that fourth fight with Dustin Poirier. That was what he wants. I'm saying the opposite. That's what I think Conor wants. If I'm the UFC, I'm trying to get Conor a win. I just see the Nate Diaz. I know I'm like a broken record. I said it. I've been saying it since their last fight for whatever was it 7-8 years now. Yep. To me, the trilogy with Nate Diaz has to be the fight. But what do I know? But to me, Conor's talking about freaking Kamaru Usman at 170. Like he likes to challenge. Conor wants a fight who people don't think he can win.
He's a big game hunter.
Yeah, he really is. Like you can. Conor gives you plenty of reasons to not like him, but you really can't. And you can say delusional. He's delusional in what he thinks he can win, but you can't like question. Like he doesn't duck people. Yeah. He isn't scared to challenge himself.
Nope.
He's not. He's the complete opposite of Floyd Mayweather, where Floyd Mayweather's the best fighter in the world, and he's handpicking his guys. That's not. as far as what I would actually do with Michael Chandler, so I just said it's the best promo. Uh, I'm giving him Beneil Dariush. I'm giving it like co-main event of a pay-per-view.
I mean, it's a great fight, and maybe it gives one more chance, for Dariush to pick up a little more shine. But yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. Just everyone wants to think of like the super marquee names after a moment like this.
Yeah. What about so Tony Ferguson has lost 4 in a row. He had flashes. Is there any positive you can take out of this?
No, no, there's not.
Okay.
Because you know what?
I was trying to set you up to say yes, but I was going to say
Chuck Liddell looked the best he had in a long time right before Rich Franklin completely flatlined him.
That's a good point.
Like,
that's a very good point.
Just
he was backing him up with big power shots. Yep. He was going in for the kill before he got knocked over.
He broke his arm with a kick. Like, Chuck was kicking again for the first time in, who knows how long. And then just got leveled. If like I said, we've had some disturbing highlights with Tony Ferguson recently. Like the Gaethje fight, where it's like this thing could have been stopped anytime in the last 3 rounds because this dude's been out on his feet periodically this entire time and he's just too tough to die. Like that was disturbing to watch. This was disturbing to watch. Just watching this dude basically need to be stretchered. We're just going to get more of those if we keep fighting. Like, I'm sure the UFC can bring him down to a level that there are lightweights in this division he can beat. If you match him up against the average guy up 2 fights off the contender series, you put him up against like Matthew Semmelsberger or something, he'll destroy him.
Sure.
But is that what you really want to do with Tony Ferguson?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't mean to make a joke right now. I'm being dead serious. I'm not trying to make a joke. I'm not. We always talk about we're worried about like the long-term effects of fighters, and I always say, oh, fighters will hang on too long and fight bare knuckle boxing, and I don't want to see guys fighting at ballrooms in Worcester, Massachusetts. Mark Kerr style getting beat. I don't want that to happen. I'm more concerned about Tony. I'm worried about like, and again, I'm not trying to make this a joke. That's just like the first example I think of. Like, I'm worried like full like Jason Mayhem Miller or Wes Sims. Like, I'm worried about like hearing about Tony Ferguson sleeping on a bridge one day,
or doing something terrible that I don't even want to like voice it out into the universe. But when you say Mayhem Miller, stuff comes to mind.
I wasn't talking about the criminal side of Mayhem. I didn't mean like that, but I mean just guys who just their personal life, everyth's just. I hope I'm drastically wrong.
Mm-hmm. Would love to be wrong about that.
Yeah, me too. He's shown some really disturbing signs before fights. He's getting knocked out, which was ultimately his like ultimate thing about him was his durability. Now he's getting knocked out. If you make me give you a name, if Tony Ferguson has to fight again, I'm giving him winnable fights with names. I'm giving him Clay Guida, perfect. The perfect guy. That's it. I was thinking Joe Lozon. Clay Guida fits even more because you have to do the Lozon Cerrone fight. But yeah, yep. Clay Guida, Jim Miller, those guys. Give them names. Just I don't want to see him in a big fight again.
Agreed. Like even the lower reaches of the top 15. Like I don't want to see him fight like the winner of Mateusz Gamrot and Arman Tsarukyan.
Nope, me neither. I don't want to see Tony Ferguson getting beat up by Fiziev or Gregor Gillespie or any of these guys. Nope. And Dev says Chris Grissmacher. Okay. I doubt Tony Ferguson takes a fight like that, and I think Dev is joking a little bit, but oh god, not nearly as bad as Rose Namajunas versus Carlos Esparza, but pretty freaking bad is former light heavyweight champion Mauricio Shogun Rua had a rematch with Ovince St. Preux, and Mauricio Shogun Rua is now 0-2 against Ovince St. Preux. Before I talk about how terrible this fight, what was your scorecard?
Oh, my scorecard on this one was 29-28 St. Preux.
Okay, I didn't look at. I should have done this. I should have looked up at MA decision because I
It
know
was
there's some people.
no, it was overwhelmingly for St. Preux, I believe.
Okay, all right. So there was no controversy. All right, good. Because I didn't think there was controversy. I had it 2-1 for St. Preux. I gave Shogun the first round. I gave St. Preux the second, third.
Looks like 16 scorecards for St. Preux, 2 for Hua.
Okay, who was the
And
two who gave to who?
one was Dan Levi from Best Fight Picks.
Dan who?
Dan Levi from Best Fight Picks.
Oh yeah. Okay, sorry, I just didn't hear the last name. Yep.
The other was, I mean, and honestly, this isn't fair to him because Jed Michoud is still a little dizzy from getting completely blasted by me
Sure.
on Between the Links this past week. So he's a little dizzy, still compromised. Should have had like 60
He-
days, no contact.
Yeah, he also likes to be like the odd. He has little Drake Riggs in him.
Yeah.
I know you have friends. I don't really know the guy. He seems like a cool dude. But
He's king of the hot take. I love it, because he's not a troll. He's a true believer. He just believes some outrageous shit, But yeah, I like.
Yeah, we might have to disagree on that. I think there might be some troll in him.
If there is, he's good at it because he's got me fooled.
Yeah, yeah. He's entertaining. I'll say that. Like I said, I don't know the guy. But he seems like a good dude. I've only heard good stuff about the guy. This fight was fucking terrible,
dude.
It was.
How if you had told me before this night that Ivanov versus Lima was not even going to be one of the worst 2 fights on the night, maybe even not one of the worst 3.
Yeah.
And it went all the way to the distance. It wasn't like some quick knockout. I probably would have asked Fridley for the night off.
Yeah, well, so when I thought about this fight, I didn't like the fight, but I didn't think it was going to not be entertaining. Like I said, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be sloppy, but like St. Preux is going to knock him out, right? Or St. Preux is going to take him out and submit him, right? Like I didn't think we'd have like a point kickboxing with both guys just kind of throwing kicks that never really hurt each other. To me, besides the fight being terrible, it was like dangling there just for someone to take, and neither guy stepped on the gas.
Dude,
and
it was so depressing. We talked on the preview about how Shogun Hua at his apex was shortlist, like one of the 5 greatest fighters in history at being exciting every time out and performing at a high level. Like it was just him right up there at that, Robbie Lawler level, the level Anthony Pettis was at for a tiny amount of time. And for him to turn into this fighter that the slowest light heavyweight on the roster beat him with literally nothing but a front kick. Like St. Preux won this fight by just snapping out a slow front kick to his midsection like 40 or 50 times. Like
he'd occasionally kick him in the leg too.
Oh, thank you. Mix it up a little. And he threw because I was thinking, dude, if he's doing all this to just set him up for a head kick that completely pine boxes him, I will change my whole story about OSP. But he never really went for it hard.
Yeah, I can kind of understand Shogun why he fights the way he does now. Obviously, at his age, the cardio is not going to be there like it was in his 20s. I also think there is a little bit of like invincibility when you're in your 20s that you don't believe you have when you're in your 40s. Plus, when you're 40, you've been knocked out a bunch of times, so you're not invincible. Where, when he was making his run through Pride, he was. I mean, he was making it look easy. He was getting Quentin Jackson, one of the best light heavyweights in the world, and just blasting him on knees in the car, like basically trapped him. He was like knocking him out and holding him up at the same time. like Quentin Jackson's like asking to go down.
Yeah.
But I felt like St. Preux, if he just turned up the pressure at all, he would have knocked out Shogun, or if he went for a takedown, which I was surprised he didn't go for a takedown a single time. He could have submitted.
Yeah, that's what made this fight dreadful, honestly. I think most of the factors here favored OSP strongly. And yeah, you're right. He didn't really press on the feet. He just kind of threw out his kick and dared Shogun to do anything about it. And yeah, didn't even try to take him down. And Shogun's takedown defense, it's just gone.
Yeah.
Like OSP, as slow as OSP is, he could have just ran him into the clinch, got in the body lock, and just hefted him and thrown him down.
Yeah, I'm really concerned about OSP too. Like he looks like a complete shot fighter. He just the guys he's fighting now, like a Shogun, is a winnable fight. To me, OSP still has a little bit of name value. I mean, this is the guy he actually fought for a UFC title before against John Jones. He's been around a long time. He's got some pretty good wins. He knocked out Shogun. Some people still remember. To me, you have to capitalize on his name because you're not going to have much time left of him. So I was trying to think of a light heavyweight, like up and comer who needs a name, and I wasn't really finding the guy. Like, there's a couple of matchups, like, I don't know if I want that. I don't want that. Like, some guys are actually past him, so I was really having a hard time finding a right opponent. Then I go, what if I do the opposite? What if I get a guy who's struggling and kind of needs a little buzz back in him? And I said, how about OSP versus Dominic Reyes?
I like that just fine. I mean, Reyes is still fairly high in our rankings just because he got so far, but he's not beaten anybody. Like, he's on a 3-fight losing streak. While the first one was him arguably beating John Jones, the last two have been just him getting brutally beaten up by top 5 guys. He needs to step back. I like that, actually.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about this for a second, and this is what I was thinking about. There's an argument for Reyes to still be good, and I'll say this, and I think you kind of just made it. His losses were, was it John Jones, Jan Blachowicz, and Yuri Prochazka?
Yep.
Okay. You have my opinion, the greatest fighter of all time. I believe he beat him. I believe Dominic Reyes beat John Jones, but whatever. Whatever, move on. Good showing, regardless. Jan Blachowicz, who wins the title, and goes on a nice little run, and Yuri Prochazka, who's now fighting for the title.
Oh, Reyes and OSP already fought. Alan McDonald just pointed that out to us.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
I'll do it again. Do it again.
Then give him someone like Volkan Oezdemir or something.
Oh yeah, Reyes knocked him right at the very end.
Yeah.
Or he didn't get the knockout, right? He did it or didn't get the knockout. It was at the very last second.
He beat him, like knocked him down, like towards the end, but
it didn't
just
finish him. Yeah, you're
decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Good call. Good call, Alan McDonald. How did I forget about that? All right, then give him some other guy. Give him Johnny Walker then. Give him another struggling guy. Give him Johnny Walker.
Yeah, Johnny Walker. I like that.
Shogun, he said in the press conference that he wants one more fight. I mean, I got a name.
So do I. You can go first.
Sam Alvey.
Well, it was either like I like Sam Alvey or I like KB Buller. Either way, it's someone they have to bring back.
Buller. There you go.
Like KB Buller has been willing to fight at 205 before, even though he's best at 185. But like Buller versus Shogun, that's the matchup we never knew we needed. Or I like Sam Alvey as well.
It's funny. I heard Jose Young's MMA fighting say that Lyoto Machida had one fight left on his contract with Bellator. Like, let him fight one more time and then do Shogun and bring back Lyoto Machida for the trilogy fight one last time. Both guys retirement. They both retire in main event in Brazil. But automatic, both guys have to retire.
I like it.
I actually like that idea. So nice job, Jose. And before that, we had a fight from the prelims get moved to the main card because Donald Cowboy Cerrone and Joe Lauzon got canceled because Donald Cerrone got illness. Like, it was announced during like the beginning of the prelims. Like, I think it was like the second or third fight of the prelims. It was announced that I wasn't even paying attention. Like, I was taking notes or something, and then I started hearing like, oh, that's a shame for Joe Lauzon. But then I realized something was going on. If anybody can ever get a pass for pulling out of a fight the day of a fight, I think it's Donald Cerrone. Like, yeah, like Donald Cerrone could pull out of like his next 40 fights, and he's still good with me.
Yeah.
But before that, so replacing them was Randy Brown versus Chaos Williams. This was a split decision for Randy Brown. How did you score the fight?
I scored the fight for Randy Brown. I gave Brown the second and third rounds.
Okay. Yep. I had the same way. It was a fun fight. To me, Randy Brown was winning like almost the entire fight except for the knockdowns.
Agreed. And the third round, somebody came at me on Twitter because I was the one posting the Sherdog scores, and he was like, "How did Brown win the third round? He got knocked down." And I'm like, "Dude, it's not boxing."
No, he got knocked down.
He got knocked down early in the round. He got back up and he won the rest of the round handily.
Yeah, I heard someone. I don't remember who said this, but this is kind of how I score the fight. I think it was actually Big John McCarthy, but I'm not really sure. It basically said, after the end of the round, who would you rather be? And I don't know exactly how I score it, but that's kind of a little basic logic to it. And yeah, Cass Williams landed one really good shot in the third round and dropped Randy Brown, but then Randy Brown got up and like was teeing off on him for like the next 3 minutes. I was really impressed by Randy Brown.
So was I, because going into this fight, I thought the dynamic was Randy Brown is a really talented fighter with like obviously just some physical tools that are hard for anyone to prepare for, but he has this habit of just losing in bad and terrible ways because of just momentary lapses of attention. Then Chaos Williams is just an absolute like monster of a knockout artist, but he has trouble adjusting when people adjust to him, and he just gets frustrated and he gets tangled up. And of those two things that clashed together, Brown won because he did not get knocked out in the first round, even though Williams hurt him a couple times. And once Brown started feeling it and started using his kicks and started managing the range, once he controlled the range battle, Williams just got more and more frustrated. He had that one moment of offense in the third round where he knocked him down, but aside from that, the last two rounds were really one-sided for Brown. It was a good showing from him.
Yeah. I actually think it was, even though like Brown, I think it was a good show from both guys, because to me, Chaos Williams keeps showing like even when he's outclassed, his power is the ultimate equalizer, that he can put himself in a fight where he was clearly not nearly as skilled and still almost win from that power. And then Randy Brown, you mentioned some of the things he did. The thing I really liked about it, you mentioned the range. He found his range. About 45 seconds, 30 seconds left in the first round. That's when he found his range, and it was really him, other than one like little shot in the third round. What I liked is that Randy Brown has been doing so well, like fighting in the clinch, getting takedowns, working that. This was a completely different style, and a one that was the most dangerous for him to fight an outside boxing affair. And he showed looseness, decent head movement, and then jabbing him up. Like his jab was on point. He has you mentioned, he has the physical tools, the height, the length. That's going to be a lot of issues for people. Randy Brown's on a nice little run, and I think it's time for him to step up in competition.
So do I. I've got a name.
All right, let's hear it.
I want
hold on. I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Let's throw out the chat too, guys. Who do you think Randy Brown should fight next? Ben, go ahead.
I want the winner of Michel Pereira and Santiago Ponzinibbio next month.
That was my backup one. That's the one I originally wrote, and yeah, that'd be hell. That would be really, really fun. I was kind of thinking two ways. Like if Ponzinibbio wins, I really would like Randy Brown. I didn't want the two like kind of newer guys on the scene, with Brown and Pereira, fighting each other. So that's why I didn't ultimately pick that one. I ended up going with Michael Chiesa.
I like that one as well, and that's a completely different look stylistically.
Yeah, it's a tough stylistic. Michael Chiesa is if you can't handle the defensive, you can't handle wrestling and having your defensive wrestling, takedown defense and stuff. Michael Chiesa will put you through the wood chipper. That's why I went with it. Kyle Lahi said Randy Brown versus Carlos Condit, because
I think Condit is way.
Kyle Lahi doesn't like Carlos Condit for some reason. Basco's Li Jingliang. That was another one I was thinking about. That's not a bad pick. We'll see if anybody else has any more picks. Sword says Condit is retired. He did retire, right?
Did he finally retire again? Because he retired a few fights ago and then unretired, came back and fought a couple more dudes. Like, the Diego Sanchez fight was after his unretirement. But I think he's retired again for good.
Yeah.
But doesn't matter. Just go to his house in Albuquerque, find him, make him fight you.
So there was the main card. Do you want to take a pause for a second, and instead of doing the prelims, do we have the awards?
Oh, awards. Let's see.
I'll say this. So while Ben is looking for the awards, the way we like to do, like to have a little fun with it. We like to guess what the awards were. What we like to do is guess the fight of the night, guess the 2 performance bonuses. If you already know the answer, we ask you not to guess. And I like to say what I would pick, not necessarily my guess. You can do it either way. So Ben has them. You have them?
Yes, there is a fight of the night, and there are 2 performance bonuses of the night.
Yeah.
So the usual
you guys
distribution.
You can put your answer on there. You can even label it if you're guessing who the UFC picked, or if you're giving who you would give the award to. Let me see, Ben. I would definitely give Michael Chandler one. That's an obvious one. And the other one, I think I'd go with Andre Fialo. Oh, that was Brandon Royval was really fun too. But I'm gonna go Andre Fialo as my 2 picks for performances. My fight of the night, I'm gonna go Francisco Trinaldo and Danny Roberts. Even though it's the main event could get it. I know Charles Oliveira is not eligible for performance bonus, but they probably did give it to the main event. But I actually would go Trinaldo versus Danny Roberts. Kyle. I'm sorry. I was reading Kyle's late. I was going to read his answer. Ben, how about this, Ben? What would you give the award? Before you tell me what you would go, who would you give it to?
I would have given performance bonuses to Michael Chandler's the most obvious of obvious ones, and probably to Brandon Royval, and I would have given fight of the night. I probably would have given it to Chaos versus Randy. Same as Boss.
Okay, so yeah, Bass goes Chaos for Randy. He goes Charlie. I'm assuming he's talking about Charles Oliveira, who is not eligible. Chandler and Fialo. Technical wealth. Oh, he says Brown versus Magny is the fight that he would make for Randy Brown.
Like that too.
Swords goes with bonuses Chandler and Gaethje. So he goes a fight for Gaethje, Chandler bonus, and then the Raw Dog, Brandon Royval.
Oh, Kyle points out maybe Oliveira could get fight of the night bonus since he technically made it within the lightweight weight limit. I don't think so because he didn't make his contracted limit. It's his contracted limit that he didn't make.
Yeah. Technical is Chaos versus Pahea. As far as his next matchup. Chandler should get fight of the night and performance of the night. Really? I guess Chandler. Yeah, Chandler and
it was a hell of a fight.
Ferguson. Yeah, it was. Okay, Ben, what were the awards?
Your fight of the night was Royval versus Schnell.
Oh, that was short, but that was fun.
Yeah. Your performance, just like Royval and Schnell themselves, and your performance of the night bonuses were Michael Chandler and Andre Fialo.
I wonder if they wanted to give Royval. I wonder if they were having a hard time because it was really three really good performances between Royval, Fialo, and Chandler, and they wanted to they're like, oh well, we could give Royval one if we go fight of the night. I wonder if they did that.
Yeah, that might be way to hook the man up. But it was a wild first round. I mean,
it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I was trying to tee up. I thought I was gonna have the perfect transition to my fight of the night, which was Francisco Trinaldo versus Danny Roberts. Now, Trinaldo, we like to pick on him. We like to say he can slow down a fight. He can be boring. This fight was anything but that. These guys are throwing bombs. The dude is 43 years old, but the dude still has some serious power. And who knew that moving up to 170 would be the best thing for Francisco Trinaldo? And I started quite wondering, what if he was 35 instead of 43? And he moved up originally.
It's really interesting because, yeah, he came to the UFC through Tough Brazil 1, which was almost exactly 10 years ago. And that was the first time he'd ever made lightweight in his entire career. He was a Jungle Fight middleweight champ. He was 185. 3 months later, he was in the Tough House making 155, and he just kind of stayed at 155. There was never any reason he really had to. Moving up to 170, all of a sudden he had more energy. He was faster moving. He had better gas. Like I was saying halfway through the fight, he looks better than he has in a long time, even when he was winning fights at lightweight. Like he used to be to the octagon what a control rod is to a reactor, just the thing you stick in there when you want nothing to happen.
Look at Ben going Mr. Wizard on us. Info.
Where did this 43-year-old man come from? Just impressive. Because he's been in a couple of the worst fights I've ever seen. Like his fight with Alexander Hernandez was absolutely awful. And all of a sudden, this fight was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fit. Like I said, I had it as my fight of the night. Trinaldo has now won 5 out of his last 6 fights at 43 years old. Which is tremendous. Roberts is he's always been a fun fighter. The problem with Danny Roberts is what happened here. I thought the size was going to be too much. And at times it was. Like at times Roberts was doing really well from range. He just doesn't have the durability. like for his style. For his fighting style, he doesn't have the durability. And Trinaldo hits like a truck. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say who should we see Trinaldo fight next because I'm not gonna think he's going on a title run. But 5 out of 6 it's gonna be fun while it lasts.
It will be fun while it lasts. And
well, let me rephrase that. It'll be interesting. I don't expect we're gonna get a Justin Gaethje type fights from Trinaldo moving forward, but it'll be fun to see how far he can go on in like a winning streak at this age.
It will be, and as far as matchmaking, considering he's bouncing back and forth between 155 and 170, the answer is any unranked guy in his division who's coming off a win. That's literally all you need.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like don't give him big matchups.
Like, one last thing I'll say is they didn't clinch much in this fight, but every time they did, Trinaldo seemed to have a huge strength advantage with just tossing her around with like a single collar tie. And I think that even limited Roberts' options even more because he couldn't even be the all the way out or all the way in guy. He had to try to stay away from Trinaldo.
And it's funny because we talk about on the preview, like Roberts is a little bit of an underrated grappler, and which is really even more impressive by Trinaldo.
Yep. Like,
speaking of a fighter who doesn't know what weight class they're in, Norma Dumont missed weight for the 145-pound limit, and then she made matters worse by looking absolutely terrible against Macy Chiasson, as Macy Chiasson won a decision. Do you think this says more about Norma Dumont or Macy Chiasson?
I think the women's featherweight division in the UFC is like a PS5 with like one broken controller. Like, when was the last time there was a featherweight fight where both fighters fought well? Because until the third round, like, Dumont didn't do anything. Like, Chiasson was winning, but it's because Dumont didn't do anything. And then think of Dumont's last two fights against Aspen Ladd and against Felicia Spencer, where, yeah, she won, but it was because the other fighter didn't do anything. Like, there was a time, and it wasn't a PS5, obviously, at the time. We had, like, the original, PlayStation. But there were a couple months where, like, one of our controllers was really jacked up. So my brothers and I would play fighting games, but whoever had the better controller would win because the other guy would just kind of stand there going like this. It was a rough summer. That's what the featherweight division has been like. Like, everyone, like, it just, Dumont got the broken controller tonight. I feel for her.
It's a good way to win money.
Oh, yeah.
Bet. And then when I was 18 years old, I had my first. This is a real quick story. When I was 18 years old, I had my own apartment. It was like a bachelor party with like two other guys, and we had a pool table. I don't know where we got this pool table. One of my roommates got it, but there was like a one spot was like a little hump, but no one knew about it. Like you couldn't really tell, but the rest of us could. And yeah, I played a lot of pool got some girls to take off some clothes with the.
That's.
I just get myself arrested. Anyways,
there's got to be a statute of limitations on like strip pool.
Yeah. The old pool. And they can't prove it was true. I could just try to talk it up for the show. Namajunas, as soon as she let her hands go, she had Macy Chiasson hurt multiple times in the third. Macy Chiasson though showed some promise to me because we said in the past. I didn't know if it was in her to dig deep when she's hurt, when times get rough. She showed that here. Like she had to survive, but she did. She was someone I liked a lot of coming out of the tough house. Obviously, she won tough. Now move up to 145 where she won tough, went down to 135, back to 145. She's talking about bouncing back and forth. Why? Just stay at 145. Just keep fighting. Just keep fighting Norma Dumont over and over again because there's nobody else in the division.
There's basically two things that we can do with her at this point, and they're both named Nunes. She can either wait to see what happens in the title fight after tough, because whether Nunes decides to stay at 135 or go defend the 45 title again is probably going to depend a lot on that, or Josiane Nunes just won at featherweight, a month or two ago. She's literally the only other woman to win a fight at 145 within the last 6 months. So yeah, those are your choices.
Yeah, that's it. That's how. I mean, it's funny how Norma Dumont was talking about, like, why do we have a division? Like, what are you doing? Yeah, I don't know what to do, but I thought Macy Chiasson's stand up looked pretty good early, and then her wrestling was much better than I expected. She did gas herself out a little bit. that might happen going against the bigger fighter. But probably the best win in Macy Chiasson's career.
I like the wins over what's her name, the Swedish Iranian girl, Pani Kianzad. I like those. She just completely dominated her once they got on the ground, so those aren't bad. But
Didn't Penny? Wait. I thought Penny. Wait, she beat Penny. Never mind. She beat Penny, or Penny
yeah,
beat her.
she's
She
beaten
beat
Penny
Penny. Okay,
twice.
sorry. Okay, what am I
Once
talking
was at
about?
145, once at 135.
Okay, sorry. Good.
Uh, yeah, just I don't know if Dumont's takedown defense has improved or is going to improve, because if I was sure that Felicia Spencer was going to destroy her as of anything
Yes, so did
I've
I.
been in the last year, but she never even tried. Like I say, it's the broken PlayStation controller. Like, she never even
Yeah.
tried to take her down. And kind of the same for Ladd. I don't know, because Macy Chiasson is not normally a great offensive wrestler, but yeah, she was able to get her down.
Yeah, it's such a terrible division as you mentioned. We got Chris Cyborg, is in Bellator now. The champion Amanda Nunes is fighting at 135, but challenging for a title. And uh, Felicia Spencer retired. Megan Anderson got cut or left the organization. The entire tough house that Macy Chiasson fought on all went down to 135. There's nobody. like I don't know. Um, and then I guess technically Norma Dumont is not even a 145 pounder for being technical.
How weird is it that in the same week we had women in UFC and PFL miss weight in the heaviest women's weight class?
Yeah. Yeah, not good. Before that, we had our fight of the night as Brandon Royval got a submission win over Matt Schnell. Flyweights is just so much fun. Can we get these guys on the main card? What are you doing?
Seriously.
It's enough already. If we have ranked flyweights put on the main card, make it like a rule. Rank flyweights are main card opening fight.
That works for me.
Schnell can crack. Schnell had Royval hurt bad.
Yes.
But Royval, when he jumped on that guillotine, I said to my friend, I said it's over. Because you could see his hand all the way on the other, it was through and on the other side. When you're getting that deep, and legs wrapped around him, it was over quick. He was tapping quick.
He's got long arms and legs for a flyweight, and he makes it work. He's got a submission game that runs off of it.
I thought it was a weird call out of Brandon Moreno. He's not the champion anymore. I don't know. The fight is still somewhat recent. I don't know. I thought that was a little weird.
I agree. That's not what I'd do with him.
What would you do?
I got two choices. Either the Alex Perez Askar Askarov winner, or if you think that guy should go up to a title fight next, then Davidson Figueiredo.
Wait.
Oh no, sorry, not no. Give him the Perez Askarov winner. Yeah, I had things backwards because Figueiredo won the last fight against
who's fighting Figueiredo then?
Kai Kara France.
Okay. Yeah, that works. Yeah, I agree with those work. Either way, Royval has a really fun style.
Because that's the long way around to, if Kai Kara France wins the title, they have some history.
Yeah. Before that, Blagoy, Fred Flintstone, Ivanov took on Marcos Rogério de Lima in a really kind of terrible fight, but also moments that was fun, if that makes sense. What was fun was seeing de Lima throw the biggest haymakers ever, and surprisingly didn't tire out as much as I thought he was gonna.
No, it's
he was tired, but not as expected, what I expected based on that style.
Yeah, I if you told me this fight went the distance, I would have said, yeah, this is the worst fight of the night. And like I said, it might not have been the third worst fight of the night. There were so many worse. Dumont and Chiasson was worse. Obviously, Rose and Carla Esparza was worse. There were a bunch of bad fights on this card.
Yeah. What did it for Mr. Yabadabadu was that he just had more cardio and just ate. We were talking about taking shots from Derek Lewis and then taking shots from De Lima. I mean, this guy does not. He didn't seem hurt, and he got tagged with some big shots. He didn't seem hurt for 1 second. Like he didn't even seem phased by it. Like, he just kept marching forward.
Yep. I picked De Lima to win, which I mean that played out, but I picked De Lima to like be able to knock him out, and he was never even close.
According
Or
to
no,
Daniel
no,
Cormier,
never mind. Sorry. Like I see. I had De Lima down as winning because I thought he won, but I forgot. Ivanov got the decision, even though I'm.
even if he won by decision.
Yeah.
Daniel Cormier scored it for like De Lima, and he was like really surprised by that, and I wasn't. I gave the second and third round for Ivanov, and I thought it was fairly clear.
Yeah, I mean, I gave De Lima the third round, which was the difference maker for me, but I thought it was a super close round. I'm not surprised that I'm in the minority there.
Yeah. One thing I think that should have happened, Mark Garter, at the very end of the fight, De Lima did pick up Ivanov and like try to slam him, and Ivanov reached over and like hooked the cage for a second. De Lima still got the takedown, but I think Mark Garter, and it was like seconds. It was like 5 seconds left in the round or something like that. I think Mark Garter should have took a point. Like it was so blatant. Like I'm getting taken down. Let me grab this to try to get myself from being taken down. Take a point, and then now we got to draw. Like punish the guy.
Yeah.
I understand the results were pretty much the same. Like he took him down anyways, but it just can't happen. Like here's my argument: if you're going to get taken down anyways, like you're picked up in the air and like you're in no man's land, why wouldn't you grab it? If there's no penalty for it.
Right. No, absolutely. And the thing is, yeah, he ended up getting the takedown anyway, but there's a difference between I got taken down and without hooking around, maybe I get slammed to get the wind knocked out of me and the guy's inside control.
That's a good point.
And the
That's
next
a very
2 minutes
good point.
are very different.
That's and even when you hook it, you land different. Like I'll go to my grave saying this. Go back to Matt Lindland versus Fedor Emelianenko and Bodog. And Matt Lindland was taking down Fedor, and Fedor kept grabbing he grabbed the ropes like a million times to the point where like Lindland went to go throw, and Fedor like grabbed the ropes, and because he did, he landed on top of Matt Lindland. Yep. Not saying it would have made a difference. I'm not gonna go back debating a fight from like 15 years ago or whatever it was, but Fedor was grabbing the hell out of those ropes.
Yeah. Yep. Oh. Just a real quick thing for everybody. Those of you who listen to our preview know that I said that Blagoy Ivanov is a real life Fred Flintstone, just kind of like the dad dumpy body shape, the constant 5 o'clock shadow. Like he has a 5 o'clock shadow like 5 minutes after he shaves. And there was a question, who would be Barney Rubble in that case? Keith wins the contest. The real life Barney Rubble is Steve Mocco, the former 2-time NCAA wrestling champion and the current wrestling coach at American Top Team. And one of the more intriguing what might have been stories in wrestling to MMA crossover. So if you don't know what he looks like, look up Steve Mocco. You'll recognize him from a million walkouts, but he is Barney Rubble. It would be even better if he was like half the height of Ivanov, because then it would be proportional. But even so, yeah.
No, I've met Mocco a couple of times. He's actually come to a team that my son he's really little, but there's like a local wrestling club that he sometimes goes to. And Mocco actually has become good friends with the owner of that one. He actually comes in and coaches every, 6 months or so. So I have met Mocco before. He's a big dude. Before that, Andre Fialo versus Cameron Vancamp. Vancamp was doing really well until he was unconscious.
Yeah, I mean, I expected this to end with Fialo starching Vancamp. And it did, but between point A and point Z, like Vancamp looked pretty good. It made me concerned just because he was so much bigger than Fialo, and it just reminds me what it's going to look like as these very exciting, still young guy in Fialo starts to move up the ranks.
Well, he's got 2 wins in a month, and the only thing I kept saying, like, this is like he flopped in Bellator. He was brought into Bellator. He was like a guy they were pushing behind. He was going to be the face of Portuguese MMA. I mean, he probably technically is, but he's
the greatest Portuguese fighter ever.
But I mean, like he's going to be the face. He's going to be the star, and then doesn't work out for him in Bellator. He loses a couple in a row. Doesn't look like the same fighter. Goes over to PFL. It is even worse in the PFL. He doesn't even gets completely washed out of the PFL, and then he just changes it around. Somehow gets 3 or 4 wins and the regionals, or not regional, but like other organizations, and then he gets brought in the UFC, and now he's on a 2-fight winning streak in the UFC, the 2 knockouts, and both within a month. Like this is who Bellator thought they had.
This is who Bellator thought they had, and it's weird to think that he's still just like 27 or 28 because he seemed
Yeah,
like a busted prospect for so long, but he's only now just hooking up with a camp that seems to click with him in Sanford MMA. Like a guy like him that was all like wild hooks and overswinging with power earlier in his career, getting with Henry Hooft might be the perfect thing for him because Henry tries to keep his guys so controlled and buttoned down.
yeah. Uh, Kyle Law, asked, would Fialo beat Chris Curtis if they rematched?
I don't know. I think Chris Curtis,
That that'd be fun though.
yeah.
They have those little short hooks, both of them. Uh, I don't know. That's. I'd have to do tape study again, but that'd be a fun fight.
Yeah, it would.
Uh, Before that, a fight that actually was buried on the prelims, I thought should have been much, much higher. Tracy Cortez versus Melissa Gatto. Uh, Cortez is on a 10-fight winning streak with this win, 4-0 in the UFC as she wins a decision over Melissa Gatto. Cortez just continues to show that she's a good topside grappler, and she showed some really good submission defense as Gatto was taken down on her back, tossing up tons of submission attempts. Uh, I've been sleeping on Cortez a little bit. I haven't been as high as other people, but I guess I give her some respect.
Yeah. It was interesting. Santino DeFranco, I think before the third round, just said to Cortez, like, fuck her jiu-jitsu. We're just going to take her down and smash her. And I normally just kind of roll my eyes when a
Good
coach
call.
says something like that, but that was pretty much a description of her game plan because she consistently used muscle and just kind of gutted out positions against a niftier, like definitely more subtle and schooled grappler in Gatto. Like Gatto was doing kind of smart, dangerous things, and Cortez was just slamming out of arm bars, like muscling
Mhm.
out of positions. Like
Mhm.
it worked.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gatto, like, way too much that she's playing jiu-jitsu. Like, her jiu-jitsu is good, but uh, to me, she should have realized early that she wasn't going to get a submission off her back. Should have been trying to do more sweeps, trying to use more. There was times she was actually scrambling and like had opportunities to escape. And like, I remember one point, she's on her back, but she like rolls through and she's just going for like a Kimura, and I'm like, you're out. Just like stand up. You're out. And she wasn't. That was frustrating. But even more frustrating, if I picked Gatto in an upset, was Gatto was doing extremely well on the feet. She was piecing her up, and for some reason, she kept going for a takedown. And then she was jumping to her back, not controlling positions. Uh, that's why she lost. If she just stayed where she was, she could have picked her apart for at least 2 rounds.
I agree. And on the feet, there was less chance of her of something happening to her that would turn the fight on a dime because Cortez she's a decent striker, but she's not a lights out hitter. So what's the worst that happens on the feet? You start getting stuff you don't like, you get hurt a little bit, or Cortez shoots a takedown and takes you down. Either way, you're still in good shape.
I agree. Like if you want to go down there anyways, but yeah, open it up on the feet because when she was piecing her up. Cortez, as I mentioned, is on a 10-fight winning streak. She's got four. She's 4-0 in the UFC. Um, and we talked about how marketable she is based on she has that Latino thing that she's throwing out there, like representing the Latino market that continues to only grow. You know, yeah, and
She was the
she's very,
only fighter allowed to carry a flag out because she was smart enough
oh,
to kind of do an artwork flag that had two different flags on it.
there you go. That was smart of her. What would you match her with next?
Oh, you'll like this. I think she should get the winner of J.J. Aldrich versus Aaron Blanchfield. I think it's a logical next test, and it gives her a chance to maybe run that back with Blanchfield and see who's really the better fighter.
Yeah, I wonder why you say that. The reason why, as I believe Aaron Blanchfield beat Tracy Cortez, and I have I don't think it was controversial. I think it was pretty obvious. But yeah, I didn't go that route. I don't mind that. I went with she needs to face a name now. She deserves a name. I went with Joanne Wood. Joanne's on, she's on a rough streak, but she lost to like the best in the division. Um, I think he used her to get over Tracy Cortez.
I like that just fine. You know, because let's face it, if she hadn't just retired, they totally give her to someone like Roxanne Modafferi, just like using somebody on a losing streak to like help get her name over. Like Joanne Wood is the new Roxy.
Yeah, there you go. Before that, CJ Vergara took on Clayson Rodriguez. I'm gonna ask you right now, how'd you score this fight?
Uh, I scored it to draw,
Okay.
28-28.
So would you go a 10-8 round for Vergara in the second?
Uh, Here, let me.
Yeah, you had to. I mean,
Yeah, well, no, yeah, it's 10-8 Vergara in the second, and first and third
yeah.
were 10-9 Rodriguez.
Yeah, I was on my way to giving a 10-8 round to Vergara in the second, but like Rodriguez reversed him at the end and dropped some pretty good elbows. That's why I kept it a 10-9. But I scored it for Rodriguez, and I looked over at MMA decisions. I'm not saying it's a ripoff at all or robbery. It was 11 scorecards for Rodriguez, one scorecard for Vergara, and 3 draws. So there's a lot of people who agree with you on the draw. Um, there's a couple of things. So one I want to talk about. I already mentioned Vergara grabbing the cage twice. Keith Peterson did absolutely nothing about it. I thought Keith Peterson was terrible tonight. But to me, this is just this was a really fun matchup. To me, it came down to like skill and explosion from Rodriguez versus cardio and just toughness because Vergara put it on Rodriguez and made him work for the entire 15 minutes. And you know what? Sorry to interrupt. Rodriguez, I was high on him, and I do think he won this fight, but he didn't. I'm like I didn't change my opinion on him. I still feel pretty high on him because I thought he showed some skills. I actually thought late I actually scored the third round for him. He showed some heart and ability to like dig deep when it gets tough. But I'm surprised he lost. But I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. That is like close fight. It hinged on whether a round was a 10-8 round or not. That's gonna be a weird one. I'm just glad that we didn't get like a majority draw or something like really jacked up.
Yeah, and if we went straight pride rules, then yeah, I'm okay with Vergara. Vergara won if we go straight pride rules, but obviously that wasn't
Yeah.
the case here.
Nope.
One of the best performances of the entire card was the second fight of the night is Lupe Godinez, one that me and you've been backing her for a long time. Beat up a girl that we also back too, Ariane Carnelosi. Everyone's jumping on the Lupe Godinez bandwagon. Like you guys gotta ask permission first. You gotta ask permission if me and Ben are gonna let you on.
We like Loopy.
Yeah, she looked fantastic. She looked incredible tonight.
She looked incredible. Obviously, it's hard to extrapolate this into how she's going to look against the best of the best in the division. Like the booth was going nuts, like saying that she was better than Carla Esparza. Like
no,
yeah,
the current champion now.
No, but there are a lot of good signs here. The fact that she was the fresher fighter, despite like engaging in a pretty physically demanding style. I mean, in the third round, she was like hoisting and slamming Carnelosi. Like she did it twice in the third round, which if you got the gas to do that, to pick up someone like that's literally your own size and throw them all over the place in the third round, then you know what? Take whatever game plan you want because you apparently have the gas tank to make it work. Her wrestling is elite. While I don't think she is better than Carla Esparza, and I'm not even willing to say she's the best wrestler in the division over Carla Esparza, I'd be comfortable calling her the second best.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to see a match up, but some of the things she did, and Kyle Lohi asked if he should go back. He missed the fight. Should he go back and watch it? I would. I mean, it was some really fun wrestling. She hit a duck under in the very beginning of the fight on Carnelosi, which was so cool. At one point, Daniel Cormier talking about forward pressure, and he says he hooking the leg. She actually what's called a Weston hook, which was like it helps you kind of control one of the legs and keep heavy pressure. So her top game was really good. The way she was stayed glued to Carnelosi came up. She dropped back down on the hips, big slams. The Carlos Esparza is a good comparison. That's what I'll say. Like I'm not gonna say she'll beat the current world champion, but we've seen how far Carlos Esparza has gone with a similar style. That's why she looks like a future top 5 fighter to me. I've always been high in Godinez. I'm sold out.
She's gonna let us see what it would look like if Tatiana Suarez was healthy.
Yeah. But she's a little bit smaller, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, but uh, yeah, and you mentioned the duck under. Part of the story of this fight was not just Godinez's superior wrestling, but just how frozen and tentative Carnelossi was on the feet, like throughout. And I
Hmm.
think that first takedown really started the ball rolling there. I think she was tentative afterwards, like because she was like, she's just going to be on my hips, and then behind me, and I'm going to be going for a ride, if I swing hard on anything again.
Yeah, absolutely. I like her going forward. I think the College Esparza comparison is pretty good. And you talked about someone being tentative. We saw that in the first fight as Journey Newsome defeated Fernie Garcia. Uh, Fernie spent a lot of time just not throwing punches and watching Journey Newsome spin around in circles.
Yeah, the first round it was a boxer versus a boxer who was also kicking and looking for takedowns. The second and third rounds, it was a boxer who was kicking and looking for takedowns against someone who wasn't doing anything. Like I don't know if Fernie Garcia could have won this fight, but he didn't do anything after the first round. He was like
And when
throwing
he
like six
did,
strikes around.
he kept throwing the same combination. It was like jab, overhand right,
Yep.
or jab. Or actually, not overhand right, jab like right hook, jab, right hook, and he just kept throwing it. And Journey Newsome, to his credit, was avoiding it. He threw a couple takedowns. Very. It was no another fight. I felt like it was dangling out there, and Journey Newsome went out and took it, and got heading in the third round, and Garcia didn't. Like
Agreed.
she could have won. He could have won this fight. Excuse me.
Agreed, because I mean I gave him the first round and then gave Newsom the second and third rounds, but neither of those two rounds, like Garcia could have stolen either of those rounds with just one good combination that kind of put Newsom on his heels for a minute. It didn't even have to be a knockdown. Like it's not like Newsom was destroying him. He was just landing a few more things and throwing a lot more things and took him down a couple times. Like
Yeah,
Garcia could have won either of those rounds just with one good combination that like really kind of put Newsom on his heels, and that would have been the fight.
yeah. I mean, Garcia, he got buckled. I think the second and third round. But again, like everything you're saying, it was there for him. Good for Jordan Newsom to capitalize on that. So there you guys have it. We've covered all 14 fights. It was a very long night, long evening. I think I was starting to fall asleep a little bit.
Oh,
If I'm being honest, but let's get to the fun stuff. Wake myself back up. I think I started falling asleep during the co-main event, so maybe that's why. Um, we have the Bulls and Bears. We have the cut list. We have our grade. Then we'll give our listener, and then we'll get the hell out of here. Ben, I'm gonna say something. Let's do the cut list. I'm gonna
okay.
say something that might surprise you.
Okay, I
I
have
have a
one
sing-
for the cut list, but
I don't have a single name.
wow, you're not even letting Tony
So,
go.
all right, you convinced me. I probably see the problem. The problem is I try to think of it like this, like the humanity in me. So the way we do the cut list, I'll explain, is they have to be both on Ben and mine's list, and I'll throw it out to the chat if anybody has someone on their cut list, let them know. I'll read it out. Um, it has to be on both Ben and mine's list for us to say they're added to the official Shillan and Duffy show cut list. Uh, I the humanity in me says, yeah, cut Tony. The Tony, will you never fight again if I cut you? Would make would help me cut him.
Sure.
If I'm the UFC, I'm not cutting Tony Ferguson and let somebody else mark it off of him because like if Bellator took him, like he could be fighting for the title. Like he'd be fighting Patricky Pitbull for the title.
Does it make you think the UFC thinks any differently that he was putting them on blast this week?
It probably should.
You know,
It's funny. It's funny. I was watching the embedded, and they had that a little clip of Tony talking from the press conference, and it was really funny when they only had to talk for like 10 seconds. On it's embedded. I get it. It's like a 10-minute video on the 24-hour period. So and it's following I think it was like 6 fighters. So obviously they're not going to have big portions. But when they did have Tony on, nothing about the company. It was all like, I don't know, him talking about like the matchup against like one little 20-second skit section of his conversation, but nothing to do with uh, negatives of the promotion. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, they don't know.
So yeah, I didn't cut Tony, but yeah, I'm okay if Tony goes. I'd rather see him just retire.
So would I.
All right, let's do the Bulls and the Bears. Do you want to? I'll go first, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Let's do the Bears. The Bulls and the Bears are a stock market reference. Sorry. Bass also agrees that Tony should get the boot.
Yep.
The Bulls and the Bears are stock market reference. When a stock is going up, it's a bull market or bull stock. If you go to like the New York Stock Exchange, there's actually a big statue of a bull in front of it. That's supposed to be a good thing. When it's bad, it's a bear market or a bear stock. It means it's going down. We do it hockey like stars of the night, 3, 2, 1. 1 being the best if you're a bull, 1 being the worst if you're a bear. We're gonna stay in the negative. Debuting UFC fighters went 0-2 on the evening. That was Vancamp and Rodriguez. Not even though I thought Rodriguez won.
Yeah, but
I know you went draw, but overall, not a good night for UFC debutantes.
No. 0-3 for Garcia.
Oh, I'm sorry, 0-3. Yeah, sorry, I can't count. 0-3, so even better.
Yeah.
My number 2, Justin Gaethje. I mean, he's now 0-2 in UFC title fights. He was not counting interim, obviously. Counting with the undisputed title fights. He is in his hometown. He's been so close. He had the opportunity, couldn't come through, and that's a stacked division with a long line. He's going pretty far to the back, pretty much to the back of the line. So the chances of him winning a UFC title has greatly diminished. And my number 1, Rose Namajunas. I mean, you're the champion, and you let your title leave without doing pretty much nothing. So Rose Namajunas. And overall, I'd say, I guess that means a very bad night for Trevor Whitman too, as both his fighters lost. Yeah, they've had much better times. I think Rose Namajunas has the ability to come back and win the title, but she give her up that thing to Carlos Esparza.
Yep.
And guys, throw in the chat your Bulls and the Bears. I'll read them. Technical Wealth says Bears, Rose, OSP, and Shogun. So even though OSP won, he has him on the Bears. Ben, let's hear your Bears.
I agreed with yours. In fact, I was just going to throw out Trevor Whitman as my number 1 because.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I cheated and gave a bonus one.
Well, because we saw just kind of 2 different game plans, neither of which worked. Like, people will sometimes say live by the sword, die by the sword. Well, tonight his fighters, 1 died by the sword and 1 died by the snord. It just wasn't a good night. And for a guy that I would have thought, yeah, he's the hottest coach in the game right now coming into this, just considering what a small team he keeps and what an elite level they're performing at. This was the first big setback we've seen for his team, like in one night really ever. Like there's just 2, like 1 bad performance and then just 1 bad outcome. The only other one I'd throw out there would be Norma Dumont. Again, this was possibly a title eliminator, and she blew weight and looked terrible.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, that's one who probably should have made my list.
And if you couldn't make weight at 135, well, this is your last resort. If you can't make weight at 145, the UFC is going to cut you because you are literally no good to them.
Yeah, we might be seeing her in PFL at 155 soon.
Yeah.
Let's go over to the Bulls. These are the ones who had a good night. Ben, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Let me throw out Lupi Godinez for sure. It was a standout breakout performance. I think she was actually the slight underdog to Carnelossi, but either way, it was close, and she made it look like Carnelossi didn't belong in the cage with her. And while there's some hyperbole to this, it had the UFC comparing her to the woman who's now the champ, and it has Keith and me saying that she has probably top 5 upside and sooner rather than later. That's not a bad performance for the second fight of the night.
Yeah, we got Dev asking if she could have won the title tonight.
Yeah, and you know what? Obviously, it's not apples and apples. They would have fought differently
No,
if they were fighting her. But she looked like the best strawweight in the house tonight, from what we could
she
see.
did.
If I
She
knew
did.
nothing else about these fighters, I'd be like, why was she fighting second and they fighting second to last?
That's right. I'm not saying that that she could win the title. I'm not saying that, but just the fact that Dev is even asking that shows you how her stock rise. Continue, man.
I'm going to throw out Francisco Trinaldo. Like, who knew that this guy would be showing new signs of life at age 43, moving up a weight division? He's a 5'8" welterweight now, and he's a million years old. And not only did he win, he won over a pretty good fighter, and just by the eyeball test, looked better than he had on his 3-fight winning streak at lightweight. That's a good feeling. And my number one, I'm just going to leave kind of some of the obvious ones up at the top, but Randy Brown. Maybe the best maybe the best win of his career. And more importantly, he didn't win it with smoke and mirrors. He didn't win it by luck. He won it the way everyone who watched him says he would win most of his fights if he would just do these things. He did those things, got promoted to the main card on top of it just at the last moment. That has to be a good feeling as well. Good night for Randy Brown.
Yeah, I'm gonna read some of the listeners. Technical Wealth goes Bulls. He says the champ's name is Charles Oliveira. So he keeps saying Randy Brown and Trinaldo. Kyle Lohi says bull, but I think he means bear. And actually, yes, he does say bear later on. Pay-per-view price, given that Rose in Esparza was the co-headliner, so he wasn't happy about the price. Dev says bulls, but I'm assuming he means bears. He goes Brazilians weight misses. Trevor Whitman and Pat Barry wasn't a good time for them. Kyle goes bulls. Chandler's ageless athleticism. He's right up your alley with that, Ben, as you keep talking about it. Connor and Dana scheming for unwarranted title shot. Nice job, Kyle. And Fialo's clean boxing. Yeah, good. Kyle was good on those. Dev goes Chandler and Loopy. He goes on to say multiple fighters on tonight's card with amazing skill sets and poor durability. Randy Brown, Michael Chandler. My bulls, I had a couple of the ones you already said, so I took them out. Tracy Cortez. Tracy Cortez is now 4-0 in the UFC. We're starting to call for her to take on a ranked fighter with a name. She's still really young too, so good showing by Tracy Cortez. My number two, Andre Fialo, 2 wins in a row. He's won 6 out of 7 since leaving the PFL. Really, really good run. Kind of completely turned his career around, as most people gave up on him. And my number one's getting a lot of hate. I'm going to get a lot of hate for this pick, but it kind of goes with my rule. This person has now won 6 fights in a row, and most people would say that person's stock rose. People are going to hate this pick, but this person has won the UFC title tonight. They have won the UFC title for the second time. They now have the longest tenure between title runs of 8 years, and she's getting married next weekend. So everything in Carlos Esparza's life is going good. Listen, when a lot of people remember this terrible fight, but at the end of it, when you look up her Wikipedia page, when she retires, it's going to say 2-time UFC strawweight champion. So to me, the number one bull whose stock rose, someone who, mind you, was in a big underdog. Again, a lot of people, terrible fight, but big underdog. She came away with the title. So my number one whose stock rose is Carlos Esparza.
And the real bull is her wedding photographer. And you made a comment to that effect on Twitter, but yeah, that's the real winner. I mean, Carla's got to feel good. I don't know what her contract is, but probably has like an extra $80,000 or $100,000 in her sock or something right now for her wedding, for wherever they're going on their honeymoon. Plus, the wedding photos aren't going to look like Sarah Alpar after getting turned into paste by Jesse Clark. So yeah.
And you know what? When you get married, you do all these pictures. You take a picture with your husband next to a water or a chapel. Or, you know what? Do one picture with her holding the belt too in the wedding dress. So there you go.
You know that they're going to get those.
Yeah, as she should. I'm going to throw one more. I'm going to give you a bonus one. You mentioned how great of a night it was for Lupi Godinez. How about the entire Godinez family? As we found out, she has two sisters. I think they said the Pan Am Games wrestling for Canada, representing Canada Pan Am Games. One of her sisters won the Pan Am Games, so congratulations to her. The other sister, I didn't hear the result, but they said she was still wrestling. So I don't know if I'm assuming it was a higher weight class is still going on. So that's pretty badass. When you have Godinez, we're talking about, is she the best wrestler in the division? And she's not even the best wrestler in her family. She's not even the second best wrestler in her family. Way to go, Godinez family. So you guys make my list.
For sure.
So
like they're the Brands brothers, or the Bonomos of
absolutely.
Mexican wrestlers in Canada.
there you go. Let's go to the grade. What was your grade for the card? Because this is a tough one because there's some really high moments.
D.
Okay.
Like, not just because there were a bunch of bad fights, because your average fight card has a bunch of bad fights, but some of the fights that we expected to be spectacular were disappointing. Like, there were a couple of really great finishes. There were a couple of individually great rounds. And while the title fight was, like, the main event was exciting, it was kind of tarnished by the whole weight miss.
Yeah.
Like, there is no lightweight champ in the UFC right now. Give it a D.
Yeah, it's so tough. This was like the hardest one I had to grade because everything you mentioned about the main event, even though it was a fantastic fight, really exciting, edge of your seat. I think it would have been a lot higher if Gaethje win, and I wasn't rooting for Gaethje. I don't really root. I root for the story more.
Sure.
And I think that's why I was probably, Gaethje would have been a little nicer. We have a UFC champion. We'd be talking about Gaethje, and he's coming over from World Series of Fighting, and we didn't have that. We don't have a champion right now in the UFC. We can kind of have an uncrowned champion, but not an actual champion. Shogun versus OSP was terrible. Esparza versus Namajunas is arguably the worst. You're saying the worst title fight ever. I'm saying it's at least in the conversation one of the worst title fights in history. I'm going to go C-, and the only reason I'm going to C- is for one reason only, and that's Michael Chandler's knockout. Cool. That's it. You were failing, and you got like you're failing the class. You got a little extra credit. I give you the 70 to pass. So I'll give it a C-.
I'll take it.
Hardest question. Who was the listener?
I mean, I feel as Technical Wealth, Dev Goes Fishing, Bass, Kyle were all just, dropping bombs in here. And really, like, they were there from the beginning and kind of stayed until the end. And, like, that means a lot to me. People that, like, wilt in the third round, like, I got no truck with that. Just by a hair, I'm going to give it to Kyle. He didn't have quite the volume of some of the other folks, but came out with some interesting ideas, kind of flexed on us that he's an attorney, which, I live in fear now. Like,
I didn't see that. Nice.
Yeah. So, but it would, very close photo finish there.
Yeah. And we thank them all for listening. I'll give mine to Technical Wealth, but he was, I think he's a little newer and he was crushing it, but Dev was great and Bass was great. And all these guys are great. So there you guys have it. We have broke down all 14 fights of I don't know if exciting, but definitely a memorable UFC pay-per-view. We'll be back next Saturday night as we'll be recapping Jan Blachowicz versus Alexander Rakic card. We also have a preview that'll be coming out Monday morning, so make sure you check that. You want to see who me and Ben are picking. We do, I believe, the most in-depth. I shouldn't say I believe. I'm pretty certain. I'm pretty certain is the most in-depth preview show in the entire world.
Dude, like on our preview for this one for 274, somebody complained in the YouTube comments that we talked too long about the fights, and I was like, I've got good news for you. If we talk too long about the fights, literally every other preview show in the entire industry is for you.
That's right. We're made for the hardcores.
Yeah.
And we also have timestamps, so if there's a certain fight you don't care about, just skip to the next one.
Yeah.
If you just want the main events, skip to the main events. Yeah, that's cool. So we do that every week, so make sure you check out that. In the meantime, head over to Bet MGM. Make sure you get your bets in for that one, especially after you watch the preview show. You know who me and Ben are picking. You get your bets, and if you're making a first-time deposit, you get a really awesome bonus. Use the word Sherdog as the promo code. Until then, guys, check out Sherdog.com. Check out all the articles. We'll have some great ones, new rankings. Ben will be doing a matchmaker. You're doing the matchmaker one, right?
For sure.
Yeah, we do have the matchmaker and all the other great things. So make sure you check that out. If not, have a good night. See you next time.
Awesome. Have a good night.